Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining the call. We have, my name is Katie Durkee, and I'm on the Customer Success team here at Global Software. I would like to thank all of you for joining us today for the webinar covering the new features and functionality in our newest release, Spreadsheet Server version 14.7. If you haven't upgraded to 14.6 yet, no worries. All of the increased speed and performance enhancements that were released in version 14.6 are also included in 14.7. As many of you are aware, we've also started offering continued education webinars for our Spreadsheet Server customers, designed to make sure you're getting the most out of your use of Spreadsheet Server. If you would like to review any of those previous webinars, they can be found on our customer portal. If you don't have access to the customer portal, or if you need to reset your password, please contact your customer success executive, and they will provide you the instructions for access. Along with me today on the webinar, I have Alan Gregory. Alan is an advisory software product consultant and has been with Global Software for 12 years. He's an integral part of our training and development team, both in the UK and the US, and is well-versed in all aspects of Excel automation and BI reporting. During today's call, the attendees will be placed on mute to avoid outside interruptions. If you should have a question, you can submit it using the chat or Q&A section of the webinar. We may not be able to address all of the questions during today's call, but we will be recording the questions and get back to you if we don't get to your specific question during the call. Some of the items that we'll be highlighting during today's call are the new features included in 14.7, such as increased capabilities of queries for end users, additional reporting against hierarchies and segment lists, enhanced analysis options, and SAP special ledgers. We will also touch on the J.D. Edwards write-back feature, Oracle Discoverer and FSG replacements, and announce upcoming webinars fully dedicated to both of those items. Last but not least, we will tell you how to get version 14.7 for you and your associates. And with that, we do have about 200 people who have joined today's webinar. If you are having any issues with the audio quality, we find sometimes with the larger webinars, if you need to call back in, that tends to eliminate any issues you have with audio. And with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to Alan to get started and show you the features and functions of 14.7.
Thank you, Katie. Good morning, straight afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the demonstration. I'm just going to share my Excel so I can give you a live and interactive demonstration. There we go. So hopefully you should be able to see my Excel with Spreadsheet Server 14.7 fully installed. And really, as Katie mentioned in her introduction, just following on from the release of 14.6, which saw some great performance increases, we decided to add some new functionality to the software for you guys to play with. So we're going to go through the added functionality around 14.7, and hopefully you'll be impressed. So this is just a simple spreadsheet. I've kept it nice and simple so we can see exactly what's going on with the new functionality. And first, I'd just like to show you a piece that we introduced quite a few versions ago, just around expanding GL rows against GXLs to show the data behind that. So some of you may be familiar with this. So we have a number here, and I can expand the GL row, and that will go away and expand the detail for all the segment parts that are behind that particular number. We can see there's quite a lot of information there. And then we can collapse that back up again. So what we added in 14.7 is a way to sort of break that down a little bit more and give the users the ability to choose how they want to see that expansion. So again, if I click on my particular number, I can now drop down my expand GL row, and what you'll see is I get another option within there, and that is really saying, do you want to expand by a particular segment? So you see it's picking up my company, department, account, sub-account, product, etc. from my report automatically. And if I select account, what it will actually do is it'll just expand by the unique accounts only. So you can see we've got all the individual unique accounts just showing up on the report and just returning the balances around that. If I wish, I could then collapse that back up, and I could then expand by another one of the segments. So I could maybe expand by department. So now we've split this number down by each individual department, but again showing it by all the sales accounts. And again, I can then collapse that back up and we're back to our standard report. But what we could also do is if I went in and expanded that by, let's say, account again, just let that expand out again, what I can do once I've expanded it once, I can then expand it again. So I could say expand by segment again, but this time I'd like to see within my account 41110, I'd like to see that then split down by departments. And what we'll see is that account has now been split down by all the individual department codes that make up that. And we'll see that the descriptions have been slightly indented so we can actually see where we're going with the expansion. So these are slightly further in, and we've then got that information coming through. And inherent within the expand GL that we introduced a few versions ago, each one of these expanded levels is actually a built GXL formula. So if we wish, we can then drill down to the information behind and then drill to the transactions behind that if we wish to get the information. So just like we would do using a normal Spreadsheet Server GXL formula. If I wish to collapse one of these levels, I can click on the particular item I wish to collapse and just click collapse. It will just collapse that portion of the tree. That will then give me the ability to then expand again on one of the other numbers. And again, I can collapse that individual one, or if I wish, I can actually go up to the top, drop the option down, and say collapse all GL rows for the particular worksheet. So that will then take us back to the original report. So what's really useful around this is, for our first option, I was just using wildcards or partial wildcards to return the accounts and the department. But how we can also use this is with hierarchies. So the hierarchies that are inbuilt within certain ledgers to group accounts together for reporting purposes, we can actually utilize those, and we can actually then expand out through and down the levels of the hierarchy. What we used to only be able to do was, if we chose a hierarchy to use, it would then expand straight down to the lowest account level. What we've now got is the ability to expand through the different levels of the hierarchies. So here I've got a particular hierarchy which is pulling in basically all the accounts, but all split into different areas. So again, if I expand my GL row by segment and do my account, what we'll see is within this hierarchy we have additional hierarchies that make up that particular item. So we have revenue, cost of sales, etc., etc. And we also have some actual account codes in there. So within the building of that hierarchy within this particular ERP system, that is how that hierarchy is actually made up. And then what I can actually do from that point, I can then again expand and then expand it down by account. So we're sort of stepping through that hierarchy system, and again, just as we saw with the one above, if I wish to, then I could then go back down and expand again by department. And what we can see there again is it's just indenting each individual step so we can see exactly where we are with each step. And again, if I wish to, I can just collapse those back up. And again, collapse that up again. So we can expand and collapse to whichever levels we wish, so we can get a little bit more of a better view on the data. And collapse that back up again. And then finally, on sort of the expand, again, we can sort of look at this and say, actually, I've got a couple of hierarchies within here. And again, if I expand, then Spreadsheet Server is intelligent enough to say, actually, I know that you've got two separate hierarchies here, so I'm going to split it out first by the individual hierarchies. And then, as we've seen, I can then expand again and again to my heart's content, just to see all the individual bits of information behind that. But this isn't only for, let me just close that out. This isn't only for hierarchies. We can also do this with regards to segment lists as well. So on this particular example, I've got a particular segment list, and I'll just show you this segment list within my segment lists area. So here I've got a segment list called LTE Direct, which then looks at LTE expenses. If I look at LTE expenses, that then goes down to additional segment lists within that segment list. And if I choose one of those particular ones, I can see that that then goes down to more segment lists within there. And if I choose one of those, then finally we get down to the account code level. So the segment list area is really our built-in area for people to be able to build their own hierarchies if they don't have that facility within their ERP system, or if they just want to build their own custom hierarchies that they look after themselves. So just as we did with the previous one, I can expand again, and again it's based on the account. So I can pick the account, and straight away we see that goes down to my LTE expenses as we saw. And again, if I go to the account again, that will then split that out by my individual segment lists, and I should be able to continue going down this list through into the office, etc., and then finally down to my bottom level, which is my account codes. And as described, we can then also drill to that information at any of those levels to see the balances and the numbers that are making up that value. So that's one of the new features that we've introduced within 14.7. So it's just all around so that's all around sort of the expand GL side. And running off the back of that really is, as well as doing this within the spreadsheet, we've also given the users the ability to do this within the drill down panel. So if I go back to my sheet and choose my hierarchy that we had earlier, I can also drill down to the information that's behind that, as usual. And our first view of the drill down information by default is this full detail option. Now this panel might be hidden away sometimes, but we can actually re-expand that out, and I can click on the little pin to make sure that it's always there. So this full detail area is really the view that you're used to seeing whenever you drill down. And obviously we can then double click on any of these lines and we can get the transactions that are behind that. But what we've also introduced is then the ability to group by a particular segment, and that's what we call it within the drill down panel. So I could group by my department, and we can see our individual departments within there. But I can also group by my account, and because I've actually drilled down on one of my hierarchies or a segment list, either way, I can then see what makes that particular item up. And it also lists the sub-segment lists underneath that area. What I can then do is then maybe click on my total revenue line again. And again, it then takes us down, because we're grouping by the account, it takes us down to the individual accounts that make that up. And then from this point onwards, it's all about, I can then drill down to the transactions that are behind that. So it's really a way of just slicing and dicing the data, just so you can see exactly what how the numbers are coming out, and you can then drill down and look at the information that make up those particular numbers. Obviously, all the other features about exporting these views into Excel are all still there. It's all just the new features that we've introduced into the product. So, happy to take some questions if there are any, Katie.
Yes, we did have a couple of questions come in. The first one is, if you change to look at a different range of accounts, does the expansion stay when you refresh?
Okay, so if we're talking about a completely different group of accounts after you've expanded?
I believe so.
I presume. Yes, so once you've expanded, that is sort of fixed within that expansion. So if I expand, let's say, this particular one and say account, we have that there. But if I then say, actually, I'd like 5,000 to 5,999, this will actually stay in place because we've actually expanded that into Excel and that's staying where it is. If we then wanted to expand this one out, we could then either collapse this one back, should collapse back, and then re-expand out. And hopefully that should expand. There we go. I hope that answers the question.
Okay, thank you. The next question we have, as the user has said, we use Oracle Payroll, HRMS, and Labor Distribution modules and need to be able to drill down to individual detail in HRMA and Payroll. Can 14.7 do this, not account level?
Okay. With using the Oracle Payroll, etc., that would be more on the query side rather than the GL side. I believe that the Oracle Payroll may be encrypted, so that might be a question for another time, maybe a direct question with one of the consultants.
Thank you. We can certainly get back to that specific question. And just a reminder, for those of you who have questions, you can submit those questions in the Q&A panel in the chat section on the bottom right of your screen, and we will continue to pause throughout today's presentation to answer your questions. And that's all that we have for now, Alan.
Okay. So moving on from our expand GL rows, etc., we're now going to look at really how we use the queries and use the information within Excel. So here I have a sheet which is basically using a query that's been written against a system, return the information via a GEXD, which is basically the detail information that's behind the query, into this area here. So we can see this is 100 or so lines of data coming through. So what we generally have is we may have one or two people designing these queries and sending them out to the users for them to create their own reports, like so. But the users might not necessarily want maybe all the columns that have been put into the query, or they might want to change the order that the data is actually coming out in. So we can see we've got things like order date, and we've got order value here, order quantity, etc., and then we've got controlling area and profit center. So what we can do as part of the new feature of 14.7 is if we go back into the actual formula itself, and if I go into my formula assistant, we've added a new area that allows us to modify a layout. So that is basically saying I'm going to take the query that's already been written, which is up here at the top. I'm going to fire the information into the area as a GEXD as we expected, with all the relevant parameters. But what we can then do is modify the layout to say, actually, I may not want all of the columns that have been put into the query itself. So if I click on the modify layout, you can see we've got all the columns that we can see in the background here, and I can pick and choose which ones I want it to be returned into my query. So I can say, actually, I don't want the profit center or the controlling area. Maybe I don't want the distribution channel. Maybe I don't want the invoice number in there either. And all it does is sort of moves them down to the bottom, so they're actually still there for us to reselect if we wish. And we've also got a layout name at the top. So we can actually have separate layouts set up for separate formulas. So we could actually have multiple of these GXD formulas on the same sheet, all returning separate different layouts and different views of the data. If I click OK, it says now we've got a custom layout, and it says that it's in use. If I wish, I could remove the layout and would just go back to how the query is actually created. But I'm not going to do that for now. I'm just going to press Insert. And we'll see that the actual formula's changed a little bit to the end, where we've actually got this. It's using our Spreadsheet Server layout for the information. If I then run my query, what you see is the information is, the columns decrease because we've actually said we want less data. What I can also do within there is, if I go back into my Formula Assistant and go back into my Modify Layout, I can actually change the order that the columns are coming out in. So I've got an order date at the top here, which is our first column here, but I might not want that to be there. I might want it to be a little bit further down. And I might want my customer number to be first, so I can switch those around. I can bring my quantity up, and I can bring my order value into place. All the rest are okay, but that's really just changing the order in which the fields are coming through into the query. Again, if I click OK and click Insert, then I just need to run my query again. And then what you'll see is, as expected, we have our customer number, our customer name, order data, etc., etc. So we're actually returning the data exactly how we want it to do from the query that's already been created. And quite simply, if I wanted to go back, again, I can go into my Formula Assistant, and I could just remove my layout. Click Insert, run my query again, and we're back to where we started. So that's really it's all about just changing the predefined queries that may have been written by somebody else, just to return the bits of data that we might want to return in the GEXD formula, and it's only available in the GEXD formula. And as well as within the formula system, this can also be available in our builder template. So as we start building our report up, I can go and choose the same query if I wish from my query list. So we see everything that we normally see as we start building the template. I'll start this at a particular line. I can put some column headings in, etc. I'm just going to set all these to be in the column, but here again I've got my modify layout. So even before we've actually put the information onto the spreadsheet, I can actually go into here and change how I want this to look. So again, I might want to take out my profit center and my controlling area, maybe move my customer name to the top, customer number, customer name, and maybe even my order quantity needs to get moved up a little bit. There we go. So again, we're just doing that as a particular layout. I can click OK, and again, it's showing us that the custom layout is in place. I can then insert that into there, and then if I decide to run this, see that we get the information in the order that we wished, with only the columns that we wanted. Okay, again, I'll open it up for questions.
Okay, we did have a few come in. One person has asked can I highlight 2 of the rows and expand versus 1 row or worksheet?
Okay, so we're back to here. So are we talking about 2 rows? Okay, so if I delete that, I think it should probably only do it by the first one, I would imagine. Yeah, so it's only by the first one because it needs to sort of look into there and find what's within there.
Okay. Another question is, if you have already created GL statements and now upgrade to 14.7, will the new features be available on the previously created reports?
Yes, they will. All new features are totally available on pre-existing reports that you've created. The expand is literally just part of the GXL. So if you have a GXL, the expand and expand by segment is all there. So yes.
Great. Is there a limit to the number of rows to be extracted to Excel?
I think that depends on the version of Excel, but I think it's over 1 million at the moment on the latest version. So no, I think Microsoft like to say that it's limitless.
Okay. We have a question that how does removing columns in a layout affect GEXD row formulas in terms of Excel column references?
Good question. Yes, you would definitely need to take that into account because the GEXD row, or if you're using particular column references, then Excel won't be clever enough to resort that out. So that's certainly something to take into account if you are going to redo the layouts.
Okay. Can you join multiple JDE tables?
Wow. Yes. Within the query designer, if you're creating a query, then you certainly can join multiple tables within the same database. So yes, within JD Edwards certainly.
Okay, that's all of the questions we have right now.
Okay. So just to touch on some of the other functionality that came out in 14.7. Some of it's around the cache, and then we're going to just talk about some of the other areas, etc. So one of the additions that we added to the cache is if I go to my particular cache, we can view the cache. What we've added to the caching area is the ability to see where the GXL balances that are stored in the cache have actually come from, which particular sheet. So if we have a spreadsheet with multiple sheets in there, what we can now do is actually say, I'd like to clear a particular sheet from the hierarchy. So I'd like to clear that selected sheet, and that will clear that sheet's data out of the cache. And then automatically, as soon as we clear a sheet, this new option appears that says, when I close the cache, recalculate those worksheets after closing that cache. So it just gives us that ability, a little bit more control over what we want to refresh, because we don't always want to refresh every single worksheet within a workbook. Sometimes it's just one particular worksheet or particular worksheets that we might want to do. So we can actually clear certain areas. As soon as we close that will go away and just process those and rebuild that cache up that's behind that just for that particular sheet. And obviously this was introduced a couple of versions ago, but we've also got then the ability, if I right click, I can also just clear cache and recalculate on a particular cell. So just on a cell or cells. So I could select multiple cells, again right click, and I can just clear cache and recalculate just on those cells if I wanted to. So obviously if we come into month end and you know that there's a journal being entered just for a particular line, we don't have to wait for the whole report to get refreshed. We could just refresh that one particular line item just to get those new numbers back. Okay, so that comes to the end of the demonstration. So we're just going to go back to our slides. So one of the new features that came out in 14.7 was the addition of more SAP special ledgers for you SAP users out there. So these are available from within the Builder template. So when you drop down your standard FI, CO, PCA options, you'll see a lot more information or a lot more ledgers that are available to select really. So there's some new FI ones and some new cost center ones, but there's also ones that are basically built around sort of job costing, etc. So we can look at the WBS elements, the activities and the reservations, etc. So there's a whole host of different new special ledgers that are around that. So the other two areas that have been mentioned at the start are about JD Edwards Writeback and FSG and Discoverer enhancements or copying those over. So what we've actually done is we're doing some additional webinars around these because the subjects are quite large. So the JD Edwards Writeback is on the 21st of March, and I believe we've got 2 sessions coming up, one in the morning, one in the afternoon for those. And the FSG and Discoverer conversion webinar is on March the 14th.
Okay. Last but not least, we will go ahead and tell you how to get version 14.7 for you and your associates. Version 14.7 can be downloaded from the client portal. Again, if you need access to the client portal, you can contact your customer success executive and they can give you the instructions on how to do so. And if you need assistance, you can always contact the help desk by emailing helpdesk@globalsoftwareinc.com and someone will assist you with the upgrade process. Thank you, Alan, for an insightful session and the overview of Spreadsheet Server 14.7. We thank all of you for attending today's webinar. A list of our customer success executives are now displayed along with their email addresses for any questions you might have. If there were questions that came in that we did not address, we will certainly reach out to you after the webinar. And if you aren't sure who your customer success executive is, please send an email to our generic mailbox at customersuccess@globalsoftwareinc.com and we can get back to you. Thank you for your time today. Everyone have a great afternoon and weekend ahead.